Well, I'm in Burbank, California. I'm inside Matthews Studio Equipment stage, the home of Martine from Matthews. This is where all his videos and Instagrams come from. And I'm sitting with two-time award-winning key grip, Richard Mall. How you doing, Richard?
Yeah, hi. Nice to sit down with you, Michael. I appreciate the opportunity.
I'm honored by your presence, and thank you for saying yes to this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, let's start off with how many years have you been in this business, Richard?
I got my first opportunity in 1976.
Okay.
I had a summer job living on Catalina Island.
Wow.
It was in between college, semesters, and one of my opportunities, the company I was working for, the Catalina Cove and Camp Agency, there was a commercial being shot there, and they said to me, you know the island, just take care of them, give them whatever they need, make sure they're happy.
Okay.
And they were there for 2 weeks shooting commercials, which was, a bit of time, but at the end of that job, I had 2 different people come up to me and say, if you ever want a job, give me a call.
Oh, wow.
And handed me a business card.
Okay.
Some of it had to do maybe with my bubbly personality, but also my willingness to help out as best I could.
Wow.
With whatever they needed. And I remember finishing that summer, and I was studying engineering at Long Beach State, and I came home from the summer and I said, Mom, I'm not going back to school. I'm going to see what this movie business is about. I had no idea. And she says, you're throwing your life away to chase the circus?
Oh, wow.
I went, I guess. And so I called the producer who gave me her card. JL Alper was her name. And she said, can you come in? You'll be a PA. I started as a production assistant. I only had a motorcycle, but I was the fastest runner in Hollywood at the time. I'd zip around, whatever. Like on the second commercial, I met the key grip who was on the job in Catalina.
Oh,
his name was Bob McVeigh.
Bob McVeigh.
And I was a big guy, young, strong, blah, blah, blah. And I gravitated towards the mechanical side of things. I really didn't like being a PA. And so I paid attention to what was going on in the grip world and the lighting, and I was, this is interesting. And at a certain point, he said to me, I think you're going to work for me as a grip. And he went to production and said, look, you're going to pay him as a grip, but he's going to be on the books as a PA because of the union.
Right.
And this is, in the mid-'70s, before the unions, it just was a different time. So I worked for him for 2 years.
Okay.
As a grip, being paid as a grip, but working on the books as a production assistant.
Right.
And then he unfortunately got hit by a roller coaster on a job in Texas, broke his back. I wasn't there, but while he was recuperating, which was a bit of time, I went back and got my degree.
Okay.
In industrial technology, manufacturing, and fabricating, because
Wow.
I knew there was opportunities to create things in our industry.
Right.
I've always been a bit of a tinkerer, and so I finished my education, stayed in touch with Bob. When I got my degree, and I slowly then started transitioning back to working for him. While I was waiting and doing that, I was actually a bench jeweler.
Oh.
I spent time doing manufacturing of jewelry for friends who owned a jewelry shop.
Okay.
I don't know how that came about, but it just did. And so I started transitioning to work for him. And then I worked for him more and more, and he wouldn't give my number to anyone else. And so I worked for Bob, basically doing commercials. And then he got a movie, and I kind of became from a grip to a dolly grip. And I was pushing dolly for him. I did occasionally with a couple other key grips, Dickie Dietz, Jerry Dietz, Bob Devine. God, I'm trying to remember some of the names from the 70s and early 80s, but so Some of them, unfortunately, aren't still with us, but Bob McVeigh still is, and we still stay in touch after all these years. But I remember at one point we were doing a movie, and Bob was doing something that I felt was unsafe, and I kind of called him on it.
Oh, wow.
And he came to me. He says, "Well, if you think you know what's right, good luck to you." And I went,
Wow.
that was the last I worked with him.
Okay.
But more interestingly, the cinematographer offered me the next job, but not to Bob. But not as a key grip, but as a dolly grip.
Okay.
And I became the dolly grip on a movie called Choose Me. Al Laverda was the key grip. That's where I met Al. Small little movie, which there was just a re-release of it after 40 years, and I went to a screening, and it was just wonderful. That movie kind of started my life in the film industry as features. I remember doing a commercial, and it's a funny story. A guy is running out of the restroom with urine dripping down his pant leg with a little video watchman going, wait, we can't do that. I'm like, you're pissing yourself for a mayonnaise commercial? I mean, I really didn't like commercials, but that was kind of, and then when I did my first movie, I was like, wow, this is interesting.
This is where you want to be at.
Yeah, and so on Choose Me, there was an electrician who got a job on, his uncle was the gaffer on Bachelor Party.
Oh, wow, Bachelor Party, okay.
And Rico Sands was the electrician who got the job as the key grip. And Rico came to me and says, look, I'm doing this movie. Can you come push the dolly? And I went, okay. Wow. I was like, yeah. So I was the dolly grip on Bachelor Party, and for whatever reason, they went through a number of cinematographers.
Okay.
And the last cinematographer that was there, a guy named Hal Trussell, he and Rico didn't get along. And I mean, these stories, these come out. I remember we were shooting at Culver Studios. It was green beds, and there was a 2K zip on the bed, and Hal says to Rico, hey, can we get a double bottom around that 2K zip, and can we get a real grip up there?
Oh.
Because the guy that was up there was, young and trying to figure it out.
But he knew that he was inexperienced. So
yeah, he knew.
Yeah.
Well, and I still remember Rico's line to Hal, which was, yeah, when we get a real DP. That did not end well.
No.
Anyway, Hal turned to me and said, will you be willing to stay on as the key grip?
Yes.
And push the dolly? And I went, okay.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning of my career
kind of a
as a key grip.
almost.
Fast track. And here we are. No.
Well, let's talk about the other movies that you've been in.
Well, I mean,
of.
I kind of just stumbled along in my career from project to project. I mean, some of it is, I don't know how I got where I am.
Okay.
Relationships are important in our industry.
Yes.
Being respectful and kind and paying attention and being there, not just on your phone nowadays, but being there and paying attention and trying to add something. People catch on to that.
Seems like there's some individuals that came through your life early that saw something inside you to push you forward in some positions that maybe you thought you weren't ready for.
Yeah, kind of. But I also figured it out.
Yeah.
I wasn't afraid of it. I understood the tools. I knew what they were. I knew what they did. And I just kind of, with the help of some of the gaffers that I worked with over the years, I kind of just moved along. And a lot of the cinematographers, very seldom did I do one movie with a cinematographer. I have one cinematographer I've done 28 movies with.
Wow.
Another 15. So, in my 100 movies, 100 plus movies I've done, maybe I've had 10 cinematographers I've worked for.
Yeah, it seems a little different now.
Yeah, a
Right.
lot of it is, one and, I don't want to say one and done, but, it's, but in the old days, you really formed a relationship. And because we spend a lot of time together,
Yes.
hours and hours, and, you want to get along and you want people to know that you trust them and they trust you. And, I mean, the director, Alan Rudolph, who I did 9 movies with, he actually, at one point, said, I'm hiring you before I hire a cameraman.
Wow.
And that whole when someone he knew I was behind him and he just fell over, but he knew I would catch him.
Right.
But that was the trust. But he also knew that anything needed being done would get done. So that was it was interesting because he would come to me and it's funny, you can edit all this stuff out, but he wanted me in every interview he had for a movie he was doing.
Wow.
I'm like, and I just still remember John Toll came in to interview, and John had just finished shooting some sailing movie. I don't remember the name of it, but John and he are sitting there, and I'm in the office, and Alan gets up and walks out, and John turns to me and goes, "Who are you and what do you do?"
Right.
I said, "Well, I've been his key grip and dolly grip on his last 3 movies," and he goes, "What are you doing here?" And so
Right.
the silly part, John probably blames me for him not getting the job.
Oh.
So, but Alan wanted, for whatever reason, he wanted me there. And so,
Well, you kind of, I feel like maybe you were the bullshit meter, maybe, or your experience that you've had that kind
maybe,
of know.
I don't know. I just, Alan knew I had his back.
Okay, well,
for
there
whatever,
it is.
for whatever that means. But Alan did all these small little intimate art movies that were so passionate. I miss that part of the industry, truly. The dailies alone, he would play music on the set. There was always, it was a different vibe.
Right.
It was commerce, but it was more art than commerce. And that's where I cut my teeth.
Gotcha.
The problem solving
Yes.
with small budgets and not a lot of time. You made up for with determination and will, or we can use this as a whatever. I mean, that was the other thing. I kind of pride myself in being able to figure something out with whatever's laying around.
Right, of course.
My crew hated me because I'd asked for 9 things, and by the time they brought it back, I'd done it with.
Solved it?
I'd already solved it with, whatever.
Yeah, a straw or
yeah,
something.
it just, So, I don't know.
No, that's fantastic. And that's what I wanted to come back to is you're only as good as your last guy.
Yeah.
That's what I say in my head. You start a new show and you're trying to put together a team. What goes through your thought process putting it together a grip team for a project that you're about to start?
I mean, I've done 80 movies on location. 80 distant location movies, which in the old days I used to take a crew with me.
Right.
Wherever. And we just were a traveling band of merrymakers. It was just fun. I always picked people that had a good personality, that were dependable, showed up, weren't, I don't care if you party, but as long as you showed up on time and you're ready to do the work,
right.
That was all that really mattered to me. And the ability to get along. And I also liked a diverse crew. I made it a point, if I could, to always hire across the board. I didn't want this stereotypical grip.
Right. Yeah, just a
I like a mix
crew
because the interpersonal adventures to me are more fun than I don't want to say drudgery of filmmaking. At times it's pretty, all right, move all this stuff, it's in camera, move it all over there. But so I liked a diverse crew.
Right.
When I would go on location, and a lot of times people didn't have the same resume. They didn't, they were younger or didn't have a lot of experience. I basically put a room together and say, all right, whoever makes me laugh gets the job. To me,
Okay.
it was like I knew how to do the work.
Right.
I wanted people that wanted to be there, showed up on time, and were willing to do what was asked of them.
Yeah, and you can guide them through that journey.
I mean, and then if they, I love teaching, and if people wanted to learn, I was open to telling them what I did, why I did, what I did.
Right.
And I'm fortunate that I was in the industry before the cell phone, which is, I think, a big problem on sets today.
It's a little bit of a distraction, yes.
Because no one pays attention. They're sitting on an Apple box at Carts looking at playing Candy Crush or Instagram or whatever. When I started, I never left the set.
Right.
Even as a grip.
Oh,
as
yeah.
a dolly grip, because I was there all the time as a dolly grip, I paid attention and I learned and watched and I knew when to ask questions,
Right.
but I was very inquisitive. Why'd you do that? What made that choice? So that's how I moved along, and I remembered everything. So that's what I would say to a young person today.
Right, I was going to say.
Is leave your phone in your car.
Okay.
Or put it in your bag and don't look at it except for lunchtime. If there's an emergency, okay, I understand that. But more often than not, that distraction is going to keep you from paying attention to what's happening on set. Knowing where the camera is and which way it's pointed. Half the time you guys show up and they're like, what the oh, I'm on camera.
Right.
And just that's the stuff that the phone has kind of ruined. The focus of what's happening on set. So that's one thing I would tell a young person is get rid of the phone, pay attention, ask questions at the right time.
Right.
Have a notepad and take little notes and say, hey, why did he make that choice?
Right.
It's interesting, okay, let me ask that later. There's always a time and a place, in the heat of battle, so to speak. At lunch, go up to the key grip and go, hey, I saw that you made that choice. Why didn't you do this? And it's not a problem to me to, when someone makes a suggestion.
Yes.
There is a time and place for suggestions.
True.
There are some times where, depending on the environment, I will say, this is what needs to happen, go.
Right.
And I tell them right off the top, I said, and I will criticize how you did that if I feel like it needs it. If not, and if you're uncomfortable with something, ask a question, but I'm just going to let you do that. And if and then if I see it's not going the right way, maybe I'll come over and make a comment.
Right.
But I'll give you that freedom.
Yes.
Sometimes in the heat of battle,
Yeah, you don't have time for that.
I don't have time. I'm very specific.
Right.
Get this, do that,
Right.
be there, done.
No, I get that.
So that's, that's as a key grip, one of the things you have to be aware of and how you have to kind of manage your time and the resources, mostly of time, and also the tools available.
Right.
We all don't have an endless supply of widgets. If I use all the widgets there, I won't have anything backed up to do that.
Right.
That's one of the things I like to do is give someone some freedom and let them feel more involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll get a much better grip because of that.
No, for sure. And them knowing that they have that control or freedom makes them maybe flourish also.
Right. You want a thinking grip.
Yeah. I don't want someone sitting on an apple box.
No, because if you keep barking, they're just going to keep retreating back.
Yeah.
You want them to bring something.
It's definitely, it's how I learned, and it's, I think, how you do learn by actually doing and being aware. And you can learn a lot by just watching.
Absolutely.
If you pay attention, if you know what you're watching for.
Well, you can give an advice to a young grip. How about advice to a grip that's a little bit seasoned and is starting to consider or maybe getting small jobs as a key grip?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of it nowadays, it's all goes back to relationships.
Okay.
And how do you nurture the relationship, one with a gaffer? because the gaffer and a cinematographer and a key grip, that little triangle works
Yes.
very, very hand in hand.
When it's good, it's
very
good,
important.
yeah.
You know, as a young key grip, nurturing a relationship with a young gaffer, as you grow together with a young cinematographer, that little triangle is very strong.
Very.
So that is what I did was I kind of saw young gaffers and I would, you know, we would together grow. And it was one of those things where I actually did 6 movies as a gaffer.
Okay.
And it was in the early 80s, and I remembered right when HMIs were coming out,
Okay.
and the light would shut off, and they'd look at you like, and I'm saying, it's a black box, I don't know why it shut off. And I went, I'm going back to being a grip, because
grip, yeah.
C-stands don't break down like that.
And, you know, that's funny you said that. I was at that same fork in the road.
Yeah.
With electricity, you can't see the problem, so
Yeah.
you have to clear the whole entire thing out.
Yeah,
and
it's
start
just
from
like,
everything. Where
let's get rid of that head
Yeah,
cable.
yeah.
Oh, let's check
Is
the
it this?
bulb.
Is it
Let's check
that?
the
Yeah.
head. Let's do the
So-
wait. You know what?
when you have failure with metal, you
Yeah,
can see the
a C-stand doesn't break down like that. So
it out of here, yeah.
I stopped gaffing, and I also found, for me, I was a problem solver.
Yeah.
You know, you throw me in a situation, these are the ramifications, this is what has to happen. What do we have available? Okay, I'm going to do it with this. That
Okay.
was, and also a lot of gaffers that I've got long relationships with, some, you know, so many years. They knew that if they were thrown into this situation and this had to happen, that I was there to support and help them.
Yeah.
I do have a story about a gaffer who once, I'm not going to say names, but at one point, he and the cinematographer and what's interesting is that there's that triangle. It depends on where that triangle is formed. Sometimes it's gaffer key grip have a relationship, or gaffer cinematographer, or cinematographer key grip. Depends on, you know, and how you come into that little triangle
Right.
is where you kind of speak up or whatever. And I remember a situation where I got the gaffer the opportunity.
Okay.
It was a cinematographer I'd done a lot of work with. That gaffer then started talking to the cinematographer about grip work. I could hang a 12 by 12 over here, and I could put a 20 by 20 here, and I could do this and that. And so I stood there and didn't do a thing. Just listened. I was not involved in the conversation. It was about me,
Right. And your
behind my
tools,
back,
and your
in my
department,
tools, in
yeah.
my department. Man,
Yeah.
I didn't say a thing, didn't move a muscle. And all of a sudden, the DP goes, okay. And there was a long pregnant pause, and the gaffer turns and he goes, so, well, you know, and I said, well, you said I.
Yeah, so
Knock
there's,
yourself out.
yeah, there's equipment there.
He goes, what? I said, you were offering up my department and what needed to happen without consulting me.
Right.
Go to it. Well, what? I went, you can't do that.
No.
That's disrespectful. You know, and so you have to kind of, I don't want to say put your foot down, but you have to establish,
Yes.
you know.
The parameters.
Yeah, and who's responsible for what.
Right.
Now, we work together.
Yes.
We can do all this. But when you say I, it's not an I, it's a team.
Yes.
So, I mean, it was very educational for him, you know, because he then realized I was not going to be, I didn't work for him.
Right.
I have another story. It was a gaffer, and we were doing a movie. Martine may have heard this story. We're doing a movie, and it was towards the end of the movie, but every time we would like hang a light or do something, he would say, okay, we're going to put a light here, make it adjustable. Okay. It's adjustable, whatever.
Right,
you know?
right.
And so after, 40 days of shooting, and we're on one of our last days, and it's like, okay, let's put a little light here and let's make it adjustable. It was a little wall spreader in a hallway. And so I said, okay. So I went to my best boy and I said, hey, I want you to build a wall spreader. This is back in the old 2x4 wall spreader days.
Right.
I want every piece of hardware we have on the truck attached to that wall spreader. Every baby plate, every C-clamp, every Mayfer, every,
Okay.
this is before Cardellini's.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to see wood. I want to see every piece of, I just want 100 pins on there.
Okay.
As a bit of a fuck you.
Okay.
It's adjustable.
Yeah. Go wherever you want.
So that was,
So you're teaching grips and you're teaching gaffers.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I was like, okay, I've had enough of you thinking I don't know my job.
Right.
So
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
my little way of going, here.
Yeah. And we go through that every single project.
Yeah, unless you have that relationship.
Yeah, well, yeah. Besides, let's say you don't have that relationship.
Yeah.
To cultivate that, you have to go through that.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
And but then as a working key grip or even a grip, anyone, when someone says, I want to do this, our job is about making things adjustable.
Absolutely. Without anyone saying that,
and what
yeah.
I tell a rigging key, I give parameters.
Right.
We need to hang this, but we need to have the ability to do this.
Right.
So if we have some extra motors, put them over here so I can swing that thing in this direction if we need to, or this or that, or do something. It's not about what, everything has a plan. And
Yeah.
what's the Mike Tyson? Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, in our industry, it's the same. You
Yes.
have a plan, you rig things, but all of a sudden you show up and the actor goes, "I'm not standing in front of that window."
And all of a sudden,
Wait, what?
what are we now doing? Yeah.
Yeah, and so you gotta be able to roll with the punches,
Yeah,
so to
and
speak.
that comes with experience, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure the first few jobs you didn't do that, and now you're starting to learn things. And
Well-
you're like, hey, I've been in this situation before.
I'll tell you a funny story about learning stuff.
Okay.
Dolly Grip, we were in Seattle on a movie, Trouble in Mind, but it was a little walk and talk down in a parking lot. And I'm the key grip, I have a local crew, and I'm like, okay, let's level dolly track. And no one says a word. And at the end of the dolly track, it's like 3 feet in the air.
Oh. You're going to be able to bridge?
Well, no, the actors were walking down a hill,
Oh, that doesn't look good.
and all of a sudden the camera's
Yeah,
3
so-
feet in the
yeah,
air.
so you gotta
and
go with
I'm
it.
like, what
Yeah,
did I
yeah.
do?
Yeah.
I mean, that was a young, stupid, just not even thinking about,
Right.
what's really going to happen. So sometimes having that, not to say crystal ball, but the ability to think forward and say, okay, if I do this, what's going to happen? Oh, the track's going to be level here,
Yeah,
but
and
the
then
actor's going to be down
they're gonna
there,
walk
and
out
I
of
can't.
frame.
Oh my God, how stupid was that? But God love Alan, who knew this was going on, who said, "It's going to be okay. We'll just boom up and
Yeah, make a move out of it."
Exactly. He turned my screw up
Yeah,
into a useful thing for
Yeah,
him.
you made lemonade out of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, but it was an early lesson,
Okay, yeah.
and one I still remember.
And thank God you're surrounded with individuals that understand that
Yes.
this craft has to be learned
Yeah.
through all these different jobs.
No, for sure. And then you have to be able to one, take responsibility.
Right.
I screwed up. I'm sorry.
And fix it.
And fix it if you can.
Right.
I do have another fix it story, but I won't.
All right. Well, I know we watered over some of your credits, and I'd like to still come back to that.
Yeah.
If you can name some of the shows. I know you worked on some. I have my list, but I wanted it to come from you.
Well, I mean, all of my Alan Rudolph movies are so dear to my heart. Choose Me, Trouble in Mind, Made in Heaven, Love at Large, The Moderns, Equinox, Breakfast of Champions. Those just
Wow.
amazing
Yeah.
adventures.
Okay.
Not all of them were non-union. Some of them were union movies. That was fine. But I did the original Walking Dead
Wow.
movie.
Nice.
Dan O'Bannon, the director. My God, I don't even remember some of the cast.
We also did Italian Job.
I did the Italian Job, Wally Pfister and F. Gary Gray directing, with an interesting cast, and that was a challenging project, a lot of car work.
Yes.
Kind of unfortunately didn't have a camera like everyone does today to take cool pictures of all the camera rigs and all that kind of stuff.
So you don't have any of those?
No, but we had a lot of fun. I did something I thought was rather interesting and unique, is I had the special effects department mount underneath the Mini Coopers cheese plate, threaded cheese plate around the base of all the cars.
Wow.
So it gave us a very quick
points, huh?
That we could very quickly access and bolt things to, and it saved a lot of time.
Yeah.
But that was a unique project where the car was one of the stars.
Yes.
You know, and it was interesting. You know, there was I don't want to say growing. It was an interesting project. We had a lot of fun. We shot in Venice, Italy, and I took a dolly grip and a best boy over, and we had a local crew, which was very interesting. Here's a funny story. So one night, one of the grips' parents owned a restaurant, and they say, you know, come, we're going to have a little grip meal. And so they come to the hotel and they get the dolly grip and the best boy, and we go to this restaurant and we're having a nice meal. Everything's out of the bay. It was a great time. One of the guys couldn't show up, but he had a bottle of champagne delivered. And someone pulls out of their backpack a little Pinocchio-nosed funnel called umbuto. And they pass the bottle of champagne around the table, and they keep filling it up, and everyone's, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I don't drink, but I was being gracious and enjoying, you know. So I still remember, you know, the third thing of fourth thing or whatever, you know, and I'm like, now it's a school night too. And it's midnight, and we have a 6 a.m. call, and I'm like, oh God, you know, I gotta go home. So we start walking back to the hotel. We go by another little bar, and they go, oh, nightcap, and I'm drunk. And I'm like, no. And I'm just turn around and walk the other direction. And they're screaming, come back, come back, come back. And I'm like, no, I'm drunk. I don't want anything to do with it. And I just start walking. I'm in Venice, Italy. I have no idea where I am. I walked all night long. I found the hotel at about 5:30 in the morning, just in time to get on the, you know, boat to go to the location. It was a lesson. And the funniest thing is, the next day, the guy said, if you just walked in the other direction,
you would have been.
I would have been at the hotel, but I had no idea where I was.
Well, maybe it's a way of walking off.
I walked off. I was definitely sober, but you know, everywhere I was, you know, 3 in the morning. There's not a single soul. I didn't speak Italian. I didn't read. Every once in a while, I'd see, University Square. I know where that is. I'd walk in that direction. It was hilarious.
Well, let's dive into that a little bit. You know, nowadays, everybody knows our trade all over the world now. And people are, like myself, are traveling less. Before you get the call, I'm going, honey, I gotta go. And that's something we can probably touch base about, how traveling back in those days affected the family. But how was it working in different countries?
Well, what's interesting is, Martine knows this. When I make an equipment list, I actually have a photograph. I have a database of every piece of grip equipment with a photograph and a name that I call it.
Got it.
And when I send to a foreign, you know, rental house, I send a picture with a name. 10
of these.
So you call it what you want, but I want it to look like this. So I learned very early on, because what I called one thing wasn't the same thing, and you'd show up on a day and go,
yes.
So
I've been in that,
so that's one of the things I do. And actually, I did a movie called Surf Ninjas of the South China Sea.
What? Surf Ninjas?
With Tone Loc and who was the guy who always farted from Naked Gun, who just passed not long ago.
Nielsen?
Huh? Leslie Nielsen.
Okay.
And Tone
Thank you,
Loc.
Martine.
Yes, thank you. And Ernie Reyes Jr. and Rob Schneider
Oh, wow.
shooting in Thailand.
Wow.
And the local equipment house, fabulous people. In that part of the world at that period, all the crew worked specifically for the rental house. They did not have, there was no freelance work.
Okay.
So when you ordered or when you hired this rental house, you hired that crew.
Oh, okay. Great.
So they had all the equipment, no knowledge. They didn't know what the stuff did.
Right. They knew the names.
They knew the name.
They knew
didn't
how to touch
do
it, but they didn't know how to use it.
So what was interesting at the end of the project, I actually had a little synopsis. I put together a synopsis and I submitted it to the owner of the rental house and
Okay.
said, "I tell you what, I want to come back and put on a little seminar."
Oh, wow.
And he goes, I said, "You don't have to pay me. Just fly me over there, business class, and I want 2 weeks of a driver and a translator at the end of this to do whatever I want. Take me anywhere in the country." And it ended up, they said yes. I went over, and the owner of the company was my driver translator, and we had the best time.
That's cool.
So I went and I put on a little grip teaching seminar to the Thai.
Wow.
You know, it was called Siam Lights. I don't even know if it's still in existence. So everywhere I went, I took it on as a teaching opportunity. Whether I was a gaffer or a key grip, it was just, you know. So all over the world, I still to this day, I just spent a long time in Saudi Arabia. The last feature I did, I did a lot of teaching,
Wow.
you know.
That's great.
Even in our country, you know, when I did one of the very first movies in Atlanta before there was the Atlanta film. This was 1986, a movie called Made in Heaven. Most of the crew were out of the circus, to be honest. Robert Kempf and I'm trying to remember some of the other names, but it was before there was a film community in Atlanta, and so there was no equipment. We brought everything from LA. It's just a different time.
Right.
But I took the knowledge I had from LA and shared it because, one, I needed to get the job done, and two, the more you keep people involved, the more they want to be involved.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
so to me, sharing is very important.